Yeah, when he first got those, I did not notice that. It was I did not notice that because it's a little bit more interesting.
So which one do you think is better? The low version or the mid version? The Delta line from the Jordan brand has always, in my opinion, been a really solid option for lifestyle use. They're comfy, they're made with a good material mix, and they look good too. I have bought and enjoyed the first and second versions, which I think were a lot closer together in design and how they felt and looked on feet. The third version though is quite a departure from that. And the question is, are they still a good option? I've got the low and also the mid to take a look at. Let's get into it. The first and second versions of the Delta were a lot closer together, not because they looked the same, I think that they looked different enough, but as far as the design language goes, they felt like they were more linked together. The third version though kind of smashes that a little bit. The low actually looks like a low and not like a halfway between a mid and a low, and the mid, well, the mid looks like a mid, and the mid has always really looked like a mid in the Delta line anyway. Speaking of the mid, as is the case with this version, you will see that on the box it's got an SP assigned to the product name. This is pretty often the case for the mid versions of the Delta shoe from the Jordan brand. What that SP means is special projects. That special projects tag means one of three things. Well, it could mean more than one of those three things, but at least one of those three things. It's made by Nike Labs, it's using premium materials, or it's a collab. In the case of the mid, I think it's more of a limited release. At least that's what happened with the first and second versions. When the mids were released for those Delta models, they weren't available for the full life cycle of the product. They were only available kind of at the start of the release of those respective models, and they also have a bit of a different material mix, as we'll see in the mid on this version that has a little bit of leather around the heel. One thing I've always loved about the Delta line is the fact that they're comfortable. If a lifestyle shoe is to be a good lifestyle shoe, the first thing that they have to nail before they even get to looks or anything else is comfort. If they're not comfortable, you're simply not going to wear it to get around and do whatever it is that you plan on doing day to day. The first and second versions use the React foam, and the React foam is one of those tried and true foams that seems to work across any type of shoe that it is put into. Be it a running shoe or a lifestyle model, it just seems to work really well because it has a perfect mix of responsiveness and softness. The Delta 3 though doesn't have React foam, and what's really interesting is that the Jordan brand doesn't seem to market the fact that it has dropped the React foam and introduced an all new foam from the Jordan brand called the Formula 23 foam. I guess the best way to describe Formula 23 is that it is very similar to React in what it tries to do, be both responsive and well cushioned. The only difference that I can see between the two is that the Formula 23 is meant to be lighter. I haven't weighed them side by side because I'm not prepared to cut out midsoles and weigh them, but I'll just take the marketing material's word for it and believe that it is in fact a lighter foam. On feet, it doesn't really feel all that different from React, I'm pretty happy to say. So what I can say is underfoot with either the Delta 3 mid or low, you will get the Jordan brand's Formula 23 foam and it will be comfortable. So I guess that's one tick for the Delta 3, and that applies to the mid or the low equally because they're basically the same shoe underfoot. And it's not just the bottom half of the shoe that's changed from the first two models of the Delta. The uppers are completely different, both in their design and also in the material mix. The Delta 3's upper seems to take a very similar cue from what the midsole tries to achieve in making the shoe overall a lighter weight option. A bulk of the upper be it the low or the mid, uses this ripstop material that is kind of translucent but does have some nice patterns running through it. The colorways that have been released to date all seem to make the most of the patterns that they've got as an overlay to that ripstop material. But they have retained suede as part of the material mix up top, which I think is a nice touch. If they would have gone with a complete ripstop upper, it would have been lighter weight, but I don't think that the weight saving could have saved how ugly they would have been if it was that full ripstop upper. I also think that the colors that they're able to get onto those suede components of the upper really look nice on the shoe. It also gives it that premium vibe that I think it needs, especially at the price point that each of these shoes are. The Delta 3 Low is $200 retail here in Australia, while the Delta 3 Mid is $230. Where the shoes do start to differ is around the tongue area and obviously the coverage on the heel. The Mid has a lot more material, but instead of going with the same ripstop material up top, they've gone with a perforated leather. That perforated leather does feel really nice, but the tongue on the Delta 3 Mid is a little bit odd. I think they've gone a little bit too heavy on the cutouts and they kind of flap around a little bit.
When he first got those, I did not notice that. I did not notice that because it's a little bit more interesting.
So which one do you think is better? The low version or the mid version?
You say it first.
I'd like to know what you think.
Well, probably it's because this one's pink. I know this is my favorite color, but I think this one, because it doesn't have much of...
Funny ears on the tongue?
Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you're interested in checking out the Delta 3, I would pick the low over the mid. I do like the mid.
I don't think this one is pretty good to go, but he does wear it sometimes. But this, we're going to go on the next part tomorrow.
That is my cue to end the video. I could probably go over other components of the shoes themselves, but I think the footage really does answer the question, as well as the words of wisdom from a 5-year-old. Let me know what you guys think of the Delta 3.
I'm the 5-year-old here. And hit the bell button.
Yeah, and guys, if you did make it this far into the video, hit the bell button. Until the next video. Laters.